My name's Geordie McAdam. I was born in Belfast in 1838, which makes me 78 at the minute. My first music experience was a flute band. I joined a flute band when I was 11-year-old. And the flute band was called Britannia. It was a wee band that had a band room above a pigsty in Paris Street, off the Shangle. And I learned how to play the flute there on March the 12th, and I thought it was great. And then I joined another band which was nearer to me. It was called Montgomery Hyde, later changed its name to Edenderry. And most of my life I've played in, for 50 years, I've played in flute band. I played in Ravenhill, Argyll, Ballywalter, world champion flute band, like orchestra. They were like, and they weren't just one day a year bands. They were done concerts and they done festivals and stuff like that. The Lord Mayor shows, Dublin, London, these bands did. So after that, I remember I'm a great fisherman, and in '63, me and 3 friends went down to Eastgate, to the River Eastgate, and the Moy down County Mayo. And we went in, we landed there about 7 o'clock that Friday night, but we had nowhere to stay. There were 4 of us in the car and all our fishing gear in the back. So I says to the guy in the street, anywhere we got any boarding houses or thing, he says, no, go over and see Paddy there or in the pub, he might be able to sort you out. So I went over a wee pub, and it was a spirit grocer's, and he was also an undertaker. So we went in and said to Paddy, anywhere we could stay, we're down for the fight for a week. He says, oh no, he says, nowhere in this town. He says, but I have a coffin loft up there, you can bring your sleeping bags up there and sleep in the coffin loft, no problem. So we went up and there was all this loft with coffins in it. So we bedded down there for the week. But on a Friday night, after we came back from fishing, Paddy made us sandwiches and tea, and I heard this lovely music, and I knew it was Irish traditional music. And I went down into the bar, and there was 2 fiddle players, a flute player, and a guitar player. And I loved it. I sat there and listened, drank. I don't drink, I never drunk, but I ordered a lemonade and sat and listened to him. And one of the fiddle players looked over and he says, do you like the music? I says, oh, great. Where are you from? He says, Belfast. He says, what's music up there? I said, I don't know. He said, do you play? I says, well, play the flute. He says, have you got a wee? I says, no, I've got a tin whistle. I always carry a wee tin whistle. He says, give us a tune. So I played the Souse and Boiling Water. And they all joined in. I thought this was great. The whole bar was singing. But before that, when I was young, my mother died when I was 11-year-old. And we lived in Palmer Street, and every Sunday, because with no mother, my granny lived in Ardoyne, and she made us a dinner every Sunday, me and my brother and my dad. And I used to go up at 6 o'clock, get the dinners, bring them down, and we ate their dinners. My dad would have washed plates, wrapped them in a tea towel, and about 7 o'clock or 7:30, I would have brought them back up to my granny. But I passed the Holy Family Chapel Hall on my way up by Ardoyne Chapel to Crumlin Road. And there was a ceilidh dance on there some Sunday nights. And I used to sit outside after I brought the plates up to my granny. Coming back down again, I would have sat outside listening to the music. And one night this guy came out and he came out for a smoke, I think, and he says, you like the music, Joe? Bye. I says, I do indeed. It's great. He says, come on in and hear the band. I says, oh no, I wouldn't be allowed to go in there. He said, come on, you'll be all right. So he brought me in, put me down on the steps at the stage, and we're all sat dancing, jumping about. And he gave me a wee bottle of lemonade and a couple of buns. He said, you sit there and listen to the band. And I never forgot that. I never forgot that. That's how I started off in my music career anyway, you know. But I always loved music, always did. Well, I bought my first fiddle in 1966. I have a guy, I always remember his name, Vincent, in Ardoyne. It cost me £8, which was a week's wages then. It was a Czechoslovakian fiddle, lovely fiddle. But I had nowhere I'd no, I wanted to learn traditional music, and a lot of the people that recommended me to go to be taught was classical players, and they had absolutely no time for traditional music. It was, no, you don't want to play that, you know. And I said, but that's what I want to learn. So when I got married, I moved to Roseville Street in the Old Park Road, and there was a pub on Ballycarry Street on the right, and somebody told me that he played the pub. He played the fiddle and they owned the pub. So I went over and seen him, and he showed me how to hold it, showed me how to tighten up the bow, and he wasn't a bothering fiddle player. He would have sat down and played, and he said, that's a nice fiddle you have. So I practiced what he showed me, you know. But I kept practicing, and I remember down at a festival in Dundalk, I met a guy. We were standing outside Marsh Bar trying to get in, but it was full up. And there was two guys standing talking from the north here. And he came over to me. I seen the fiddle case, and my mate had a banjo case. And he says to me, where you from? You play a fiddle? I says, aye. He says, I'm Jackie Donnan. I says, well, I'm Geordie McAdam, to start McGarry. And he says, where do you play up in Belfast? I said, we don't play anywhere, we're not good enough. He says, we're down here. I said, we're down here to hear music. He says, will you come to Blue House on Saturday night, and there's 3 or 4 fiddle players and a guitar player, and you can sit in my yacht and learn tune. And I was in Blue House for about 20 years. Played in a wee telephone room. So it was just a wee Jackie Donnan, Naser Bullier and Diana Gillen, Diana Bullier, and a couple of our boys fiddle, and that's where I learnt my fiddling. And there was a bar there at the top of Albert Street called the Old House, and the cream of traditional Irish musicians played in there. There was Tom and Leo Ginley, flute and fiddle. They were uncle and aunt nephew. John Maguire, Josephine Keegan, Miriam Mulholland, who else was there? Tommy Gunn, Sean McAloon, great paper and fiddle player. So we used to go down and sit there, me and my mate, and listen to them every Friday night and watch. And after about 5 or 6 weeks, and the place was nearly empty. You know what I mean? Nowadays they would have been lining up to hear these guys. They're all dead. But I remember McAloon was walking by us one night, just him and me sitting. I think there was only about 5 people in the pub. And he came back and he says, you boys like the music? I says, oh, it's great. He says, just play. I said, well, I'm learning the fiddle and this guy's learning the banjo. And he says, well, if we can help you, and I don't hesitate to ask. Well, don't get many folk from the Shankill in here. You know, so after that, really, we couldn't go back because it was part of some headbanger and find out, you know. But they were a great influence to me, so they were, especially Sean Maguire. Sean Maguire was my hero. Greatest fiddle player ever come out of Ireland. So, yeah. Well, I love inventing musical instruments, and I seen on YouTube a guy playing fiddle out of matchsticks. This was about 3 months ago, and I said to myself, I'm going to have a go at making a fiddle out of match. So that was my first one. I made it round so it didn't have too much difficulty in it. But this one here I made out of my Stradivari mould. So it's very nearly the same dimensions as a Stradivari. It's made out of matches too. I've made 6. But they're unpredictable a wee bit because they're still new, and the glue is still, it's old hoof glue, and it pulls a wee bit over the time. But she'll settle down, and once it settles, it should be all right. My dad smoked a pipe all his life, and he died at 86. 84 he was when he died. And I always loved the smell of the pipe. I play a tune called Boiling Water, and You know where I heard it played? And up in a wee place called Concord in North Carolina. There was 4 fiddle players and a couple of banjo players playing Boiling Water. I said to him, where'd you get that tune from? Oh, I've been playing that for years, boy. They knew that tune, and nobody knew what it was about. It just passed down from father to son. My daddy played that. I remember one guy at a wee session in the house. I have wee sessions in the houses over there. And I remember a guy asking, there was no man, no woman sitting in the front row, and it was a wee concert, like a wee session, concert, and they called this lady up for the done. And her husband was sitting beside her, and he said, boy, and he says, she's afeard. I said, where do you get that word from? I said, that's an Ulster Scot word, afeard. Ah, he says, that's been in my family for years. And he says, another thing I would call her would be an old feardy. I couldn't believe it. Hundreds of years in the mountains, they were cut off for years, you see, in the mountains after they moved. See, people don't know their history about the contribution the Scots and Scotch-Irish made. You know what I mean? They didn't stop in New York and Boston. They pushed right through the west and settled in the west, headed west, go west, young man. And they opened up all that land, so it did. And they brought their traditions with them. I remember one American said to me, Geordie, I know I brought the fiddle, he says, but what about the pipes? Why didn't I bring the pipes? And I couldn't tell him, but there's hundreds of pipe bands in America, kilts and everything. I've seen them, big Highland gatherings and all around the Appalachian. Brilliant. Chords beat me. I have a wee ukulele jam there in Fiddles on Thursday night. Oh, that's brilliant. I hadn't got a uke, so I made one of the matches. And a Tuesday night up in Sunflower, same crowd, only there's more up there. Sunflower in Union Street, facing Old Smithfields, Gresham Street. Modern stuff and old stuff, you know, will you come home, Bill Bailey, won't you come home, no, all them. You are my sunshine, your cheating heart, you know all that. A couple of months ago I had the great honour of having Phil Cunningham in my shop. I was able to get a admirer, and I learnt a lot of tunes off him and Ali Bain. And he came down and he played a lovely air called Flatwater Fran. It was a thing he was doing for a canoeist, a kind of a musical score. And this was the start of it, where she was on calm water. And then it would get into the rough water and then the rapids, and it speeded it up now. But this is the wee air, and I learned this off Phil Cunningham. He wrote it, composed it, and it's a nice wee thing. And I will have a go at it on a matchstick fiddle. nice we hear, isn't it? He wrote, I could post that out.
I'll ne'er blame my partial fancy. Nothing could resist my Nancy, but to see her was to love her. Love but her and love forever. Had we never loved so kindly, had we never loved so blindly, never met and never parted, we had ne'er been broken hearted.